Good morning, students. So, in the last class, we discussed the coagulation methods of colloids. There are several methods for the coagulation of colloids. In that, the first method we discussed in the previous class. That is addition of electrolyte. Presence of small amount of electrolyte can keep the colloidal solution stable, whereas the presence of same electrolyte in large quantities can keep the colloidal solution unstable. As a result, the colloidal particles undergo coagulation and get precipitated. This phenomenon is called coagulation. Among lyophilic and lyophobic colloids are less stable, so they can be coagulated easily, whereas lyophilic colloids are more stable, and the stability of these lyophilic colloids is due to one is solvation and one more is due to charge. Then how to coagulate this lyophilic and lyophobic by the addition of electrolytes? In the previous class we discussed, and related to that we discussed about Hardy schedule, that is coagulating power of the added electrolyte, which is nothing but, so larger the valence of active ion, greater is its coagulation power. For a positively charged colloid, negative ions are active ions. Similarly, for a negatively charged colloid, positive ions are the active ions. As the charge present on the active ion increases, its coagulation power increases. As coagulation power increases, its coagulation value decreases. So, larger the valence of active ion, greater is its coagulation power, smaller its coagulation value. That is what we discussed in the previous class by addition of electrolyte. Now let us see some other methods which are used for coagulation of colloids. That is both lyophilic as well as lyophobic colloids. By electrophoresis. So what is electrophoresis? We discussed in the characteristic properties of colloids. So by using this electrophoresis process, we can find the charge present on the colloids. That means when an electric field is applied in a colloidal solution, the colloidal particles move towards oppositely charged electrodes. For example, if a colloid is positively charged, then this positively charged colloidal particles will move towards cathode, which is negatively charged. Now, if the electrophoresis process is carried out for a long time, then what happens? All the positive ions are migrated towards the cathode. At the cathode, the positive charge present on the colloidal particles will be neutralized. Whenever the charge present on the colloidal particles is neutralized, then the particles undergo coagulation and get settled by gravitational force. So if electrophoresis process is carried for a long time, then the colloidal particles present in the colloidal solution migrate towards oppositely charged electrodes. At that oppositely charged electrodes, what the charge present on the colloid, that will be neutralized by that electrode. As a result, the charge will be neutralized and the particles undergo coagulation, get settled. So by electrophoresis, we can coagulate the colloidal particles. This is the second method. By persistent dialysis. So this dialysis process we use for the purification of colloids. That is, whatever the excess of electrolyte particles are present in colloidal solution, that excess of electrolyte particles can be removed by the dialysis process. Means the concentration of electrolyte particles are decreased to the required level by using this dialysis process. Suppose if the dialysis process is continued for a long time, then whatever the electrolyte particles present in colloidal solution, all electrolyte particles will be removed. That means, suppose if a colloidal solution is positively charged, so these positively charged ions which are adsorbed here, these are electrolyte particles. If dialysis process is continued for a long time, all these electrolyte particles present on the surface of colloidal particle will be removed. Then this becomes neutralized. Then two colloidal particles approach each other and they will get precipitated. So if dialysis process is carried out for a long time, then all the electrolyte particles in the colloidal solution will be removed completely. As a result, the colloidal particles becomes neutral, and these neutral particles undergo coagulation and they will get settled. So by persistent dialysis, that is by a long time, the dialysis process is carried out for a long time, then the colloidal particles undergo coagulation and they will get settled. Next, by heating. So by heating also, the colloidal solution undergo coagulation. Best example, egg. If you boil egg, the liquid protein present in that egg becomes a solid. That means on boiling the egg, the proteins present in that egg undergo coagulation and becomes a solid. So like that, by heating the colloidal solution, we can cause the coagulation of colloidal particles. Suppose if it is a solution, if a solution contains colloidal particles, let us assume this is a colloidal particle which is having positive charge. These are positively charged colloidal particles. Now what happens on heating? On heating, whatever the adsorbed layer is there, that means here on heating, the kinetic energy of these particles increases. When the kinetic energy of these particles increases, they can collide with each other. When these particles collide with each other, the adsorbed layer will be disturbed. That means some electrolyte particles what get adsorbed here, these will be removed. Then what happens? When these two particles approaches each other, they will combine with one another and forms a bigger particle. And this larger particle gets settled by gravitational force. So, on heating a colloidal solution, the kinetic energy of the particles increases and the particles will collide with each other. During the collisions, whatever the adsorbed layer is there, that adsorbed layer will be disturbed. If the adsorbed layer is disturbed, that means the ions get separated from the surface of colloidal particle. Then these colloidal particles undergo coagulation and get settled. So this is nothing but a coagulation of colloids by heating process. And one more, by mixing a oppositely charged colloid. Suppose I have taken a colloidal solution which is having negatively charged particles. This is the colloidal solution having negatively charged particle. Now to this, I will add another colloidal solution which is having the particles of positive charge. Means just we are mixing the two colloidal solution having oppositely charged particles. Suppose if I add the colloidal solution having positive charge to this colloidal solution having negative charge, what happens? The charge present on these colloidal particles will be neutralized by the charge present on this colloidal particle. As a result, mutual neutralization of charge takes place. So due to mutual neutralization of charge, the particles undergo coagulation and they will get settled. This is a coagulation of colloids by mixing oppositely charged colloids. So these are the methods which we are using for coagulation of colloids. Even some other methods also there. Freezing, centrifugation. By using centrifugation and freezing also we can coagulate the colloidal particles. And that freezing and centrifugation process generally we use for emulsions. What is emulsion? A liquid dispersed in another liquid. If liquid colloidal solution is there, those can be coagulated by either by using centrifugation process or by even freezing also. Okay. Right. So I'll see once again. The colloidal particles can be coagulated. One, by addition of electrolyte. Both lyophilic as well as lyophobic colloids can be coagulated. Lyophilic are more stable, so more amount of electrolyte is required here for lyophilic and less amount of electrolyte required for lyophobic. Second one, by electrophorese. So during electrophorese, the ions are displaced. There is a colloidal particles are displaced towards oppositely charged electrodes. At these oppositely charged electrodes, the charge present on the colloidal particles will be neutralized and the particles will get precipitated. Third one, by persistent dialysis. During dialysis process, the electrolyte particles present in the colloidal solution can be decreased. That is, up to a required level, we can reduce the concentration of electrolyte particles. Suppose if the dialysis process is carried out for a long time, then all the electrolyte particles will be removed from the colloidal solution. Whenever all the electrolyte particles are removed, the colloidal particles undergo coagulation and they will get settled. That is persistent dialysis. By heating, on heating the colloidal solution, the kinetic energy of the particles increases and the collisions between the colloidal particles increases. During collisions, whatever the adsorbed layer is there, that adsorbed layer will be disturbed. As a result, the particles undergo coagulation and get settled. By mixing oppositely charged colloids. On mixing the oppositely charged colloids, the charge present on the one colloidal particle is neutralized by the charge present on the another colloidal particle. As a result, mutual neutralization takes place and particles will get precipitated. So these are the methods which are used for a coagulation of colloids. This is next another property, and still one more property is there, that is protection of colloids. Still now we discussed how to coagulate the colloids. Now we are going to discuss about how to protect the colloids. Now, if we compare lyophilic and lyophobic colloids, so lyophilic colloids are more stable. And the stability of this lyophilic colloids is due to, one is due to solvation and one is due to charge. Solvation and charge are responsible for the stability of lyophilic colloids. Whereas, if you take lyophobic colloids are less stable. The main reason for the less stability of this lyophobic colloids is there is no extent of solvation, almost negligible solvation effect is there. And one more here. These lyophilic colloids have the property to stabilize these lyophobic colloids. Once again, lyophilic colloids has the ability to stabilize the lyophobic colloids. That means if we add small amount of lyophilic colloid to a lyophobic colloid, we can keep the lyophobic colloid stable. So addition of small amount of lyophilic colloids can stabilize lyophobic colloids. One simple example, milk if you take. So milk is a naturally available colloidal solution. See, this milk contains casein, a protein. The protein casein present in the milk can protect the milk colloidal solution. So this is the protecting agent here. Simply what you call as a emulsifying agent in terms of term, exact term is casein acts as an emulsifying agent for milk. Okay, but like that, we can keep the lyophobic colloids stable by the addition of small amount of lyophilic colloids like starch, gum, gelatin. These are some examples of lyophilic colloids which are commonly used for stabilization of lyophobic colloids. Now see how a lyophilic colloid can keep the lyophobic colloid stable. So I have taken lyophobic colloid. These are the colloidal particles. Now, if we add a small, this is lyophobic colloid. This is lyophobic colloid. To this lyophobic colloid, I am going to add a lyophilic colloid in small amounts. Whenever this lyophilic colloid is added in small amounts, then it forms a protective film at the interface of colloidal particles and the dispersion medium. That means over the surface of these colloidal particles, this lyophilic colloid can form a protective film. A thin layer of lyophilic colloid is formed here on the surface of this. So due to the formation of this protective film over the surface of these choroidal particles, it can prevent the coagulation of two particles. When these two particles approaches each other, this protective film present between the two choroidal particles can prevent the coagulation of these particles. Thereby, we can keep the colloidal solution stable. A simple example: if you take oil in water emulsion, to the oil in water emulsion, if add a small amount of gum or small amount of gelatin, we can keep the solution stable. Okay, right. So like this, lyeophobic colloids are less stable, and these lyeophobic colloids are stabilized by the addition of small amount of lyophilic colloid. And this lyophilic colloid, what we added here, this is called as a protective colloid. So what are protective colloids? Protective colloids are the lyophilic colloids added in small amounts to lyeophobic colloid to keep the lyeophobic colloidal solution stable. That is called as protective colloids. So overall, lyophilic colloids acts as protective colloids, and these lyophilic colloids, when added in small amounts to lyeophobic colloids, they forms a thin layer at the interface of choroidal particle and the dispersion medium and keep the choroidal solution stable by preventing coagulation. Like this, what the lyophilic colloids we are added here, these are called as protective colloids. And this protective power of colloids can be explained based on a gold number. So the protective power of the colloids can be explained in terms of gold number. See, in case of earlier case, what we discussed, the coagulation value. Coagulation power can be explained in terms of coagulation value. Similarly, protective power can be explained in terms of gold number. Then what this gold number is? See, gold number is nothing but number of milligrams of protective colloid. Number of milligrams of protective colloid required to prevent coagulation of to prevent coagulation of 10 ml of standard gold salt. To prevent coagulation of 10 ml of standard gold salt by the addition of 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution. See this is gold number definition. Number of milligrams of protective colloid required to prevent the coagulation of 10 ml of standard gold salt by the addition of 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution. Now, so I'll explain very clearly here. See, here I have taken a vessel. In this vessel, I have taken a 10 ml of gold salt. Now, to this 10 ml of gold salt, if we add 1 ml of 10% NaCl to the 10 ml of gold salt, standard gold salt, if we add 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution, then all the gold color particles will be coagulated. To prevent this coagulation by the addition of this NaCl, we should have to add a protective colloid here. Before adding this, then how many milligrams of protective colloid we have to add before adding this 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution to this gold salt? That is called gold number. See once again, 10 ml of gold salt I have taken. Before adding 1 ml of 10% NaCl, how many milligrams of protective colloid should be added to prevent coagulation? Means, I'll take an example here, starch. starch gold number is 25. That means 10 ml of gold salt, if you take directly, if you add 1 ml 10% NaCl, gold particles will be coagulated. Suppose first by taking 10 ml of gold salt, to that if you add 25 milligrams of starch, after adding 25 milligrams of starch, then if you add 1 ml of 10% NaCl solution, then coagulation cannot take place. Means what the 25 milligrams of starch we have added here, that 25 milligrams of starch forms a protective film over the surface of gold particles. Thereby, it can prevent the coagulation by the addition of 1 ml of 10% NaCl. That is what is called as a gold number. So, number of milligrams of protective colloid required to prevent coagulation of 10 ml of standard gold salt by the addition of 1 ml of 10% NaCl. This is called as gold number. Among the known protective colloids, starch is having a higher gold number, 25 or more than 25 is there. Least gold number is for gelatin. The gold number of gelatin is 0.0012 to 0.005. So this is a very small value. Means to the 10 ml of gold salt, if we add just 0.001 milligrams of gelatin, we can prevent coagulation. For the same 10 ml of gold salt, we require 25 milligrams of starch. That means this is required in small amounts. This is required in large amounts. So, among the given protective colloids, the protective colloid with the least gold number is having higher protective power. See, for 10 ml of gold salt, gelatin require only 0.001 milligrams, whereas starch required is 25 milligrams. This is less required, this is large amount required. That means among the given protective colloids, the protective colloid with the least gold number is having highest protective power. Just like as earlier what we discussed, coagulation power. Lesser the flocculation value, greater the coagulation power. Similarly, lesser the gold number, greater is the protective power. So this is regarding production of colloids. So after preparation of some colloids, we require the production of colloids because we have to keep the colloids for a long time. Best example, what we are using, hair creams, vanishing creams, okay, cold creams. After preparation of these, we can preserve them up to 1 year or 2 years minimum. To keep them stable, we should add some protective agents, and that protective agents are nothing but are called as protective colloids. And the production power of that colloids can be explained in terms of gold number. Smaller the gold number, greater the production power. Greater the gold number, smaller the production power. So this is regarding the production of colloids. So these are all regarding the properties of colloids, whatever we discussed till now from last 2-3 classes. See, once all the properties what we discussed are colligative properties, first one. Second one is Tyndall effect. Third one is color. Fourth one is Brownian movement. And the fifth one is charge. Sixth one is coagulation of colloids. And the seventh one is what we discussed right now, that is production of colloids. So these are the 7 properties mentioned as per the syllabus for colloids. Now, come to one more topic, emulsions. So emulsions are the colloidal solution in which a liquid dispersed in another liquid. So this is nothing but a liquid in liquid type emulsion. So nothing but liquid in liquid type colloidal solution. If a liquid dispersed phase is dispersed in another liquid dispersion medium, this is a dispersed phase and this is dispersion medium. A liquid dispersed in another liquid is nothing but called as emulsion. And these emulsions are classified into 2 types. The one is oil in water type. Simply we'll write just O by W. Otherwise, water in oil type. On one thing here, what the two liquids we have taken here, the two liquids must be immiscible or partially miscible. Suppose if two liquids are miscible with each other, then we will not get a colloidal solution, simply we will get a true solution. The homogeneous mixture you can get, that is a true solution. What the two liquids we have taken here, the two liquids must be immiscible with each other or they should be partially soluble. Then what happened is, on mixing these two, and if you shake vigorously, then one of the liquid will be dispersed in another liquid, which is present in small amount, that is dispersed in another liquid which is in large amount. Generally, out of these two liquid components, one is water and one is water insoluble component. And that water insoluble component is generally taken as oil. So one is taken as water and one is taken as oil, there is a water insoluble component. Two possibilities are there. So when you mix two liquids, oil particles can be dispersed in water or water particles can be dispersed in water. If you take large amount of water, in large amount of water, if you add small amount of oil and shake vigorously, then that oil particles will be dispersed as tiny droplets in water. This is completely water. In this water, what the small amount of oil we have added, that oil will be dispersed as tiny droplets. So what I mentioned here, droplets, these droplets are nothing but oil droplets. So this droplet is oil and this is water. This is oil in water type emulsion. And one more possibility is, so take oil, in oil, this is oil, in oil, water get dispersed as tiny droplets. These droplets are nothing but droplets of water. This is water droplets. This is nothing but second case. Let us see some examples for this oil in water type. Milk. Milk is an example of oil in water type emulsion. Vanishing creams. So vanishing creams are nothing but oil in water type emulsion. So if you take milk, what does milk consist of? Milk is nothing but a liquid fat dispersed in water. That liquid fat is nothing but oil droplets. That oil droplets are dispersed in water. So if you take some milk, without boiling milk, if you kept it for a long time, what happens? The milk will be, it will be spoiled. After a long time, if you boil, that will be curdling takes place. That means the emulsions are less stable. So we cannot keep them for a long time stable. And one more. See now examples for water in oil type emulsion. And for this example is nothing but butter, cream. Nothing but what we are using face creams, cold cream. Okay. So cold cream is an example for water dispersed in oil. Moisturizing creams. Whatever we are using moisturizing creams, foundation creams, these are all examples of water in oil type emulsions. So overall, if a liquid gets dispersed in another liquid as colloidal particles, then it is called as emulsion. Among these two liquids, one is immiscible with another one or partially soluble. Generally among those two, one is taken as water and another is taken as oil. Depending on the dispersion of the particles, we can get two types of emulsions. Oil dispersed in water type, examples are milk and vanishing creams, and water dispersed in oil type. Example, butter and cream are examples for water in oil type emulsions. One more example, cod liver oil. So cod liver oil is also example of water dispersed in oil. But all these emulsions are less stable. If you keep these emulsions for long time, whatever these oil droplets are there, these oil droplets come close to each other and undergo coagulation and two layers get separates. Oil layer, water layer gets separate. Here also, the water droplets undergo coagulation and water layer and oil layer get separation. Okay, so emulsions are less stable. But to keep the emulsion stable, we should add a third substance called as emulsifying agent. Emulsifying agent. What is an emulsifying agent? Generally, emulsions are less stable. To keep the emulsion stable, we will add a third substance in small amounts. And the third substance, what is added to keep the emulsion stable is called as emulsifying agent. As we discussed earlier, milk. Milk contains casein. So milk contains casein, which acts as emulsifying agent. Casein present in the milk acts as emulsifying agent, and that keep the milk emulsion stable. So other than milk, if you take a remaining emulsions, for that we should add emulsifying agent in small amounts. Then generally, what the emulsifying agents used for oil dispersed in water? Nothing but gum, gelatin, protein, natural and synthetic soaps. So gelatin, protein, natural and synthetic soaps, these are generally used to keep the oil in water type emulsion stable. For example, if oil dispersed in water, coconut oil or ground anyone, if that is dispersed in water, if add a small amount of egg albumin, that's what protein. If add small amount of egg albumin, then that oil in water emulsion can be kept stable for a long time. And here, so what are the emulsifying agents used for water dispersed in oil type emulsion? Water dispersed in oil type emulsions can be stabilized by heavy metal salts. Heavy metal salts of fatty acids. See, soaps are nothing but a sodium or potassium salts of fatty acid. Instead of sodium and potassium, if you take heavy metal salts of fatty acids, then they can keep this water in oil type emulsion stable. Next, long chain alcohols. Lamp black. So these are the common substances which are commonly used for as emulsifying agents for water in oil type emulsion. So once again, emulsions are less stable. So the emulsions are kept stable by the addition of a third substance in small amount, which is called as emulsifying agent. Commonly used emulsifying agents for oil in water type emulsion are gelatin, protein, natural and synthetic soaps. And the emulsifying agents used for water in oil type emulsion are heavy metal salts of fatty acid, long chain alcohols, lamp black. These are commonly used emulsifying agents for oil in water type emulsion. Then how this emulsifying agent can keep the emulsion stable? What is the role of this emulsifying agent? As we discussed in cleaning action of soap also, during micelle formation, the role of soap in cleaning action of soap is it acts as emulsifying agent. Soap acts as emulsifying agent for oil dispersed in water type emulsion. The same what we discussed here. So, so whenever this soap solution is added, what happens? This stereotians forms a protective film over this, means by forming micelle. So whenever soap solution is added here, this soap solution can form protective film over the surface of this oil particles, which prevents the coagulation of oil particles. Means the emulsifying agents forms a protective film on the surface of the colloidal particles. So by forming a protective film on the surface of colloidal particles, it prevents the coagulation of these colloidal particles. As a result, we can keep the colloidal solution stable. So this is the role of emulsifying agent. Then come to the some characteristic properties of emulsions. See, in emulsions, generally the colloidal particles are negatively charged. In most of the emulsions, the colloidal particles are negatively charged. Next, this emulsion can be diluted by adding any proportions of dispersion medium. Suppose oil dispersed in water is there, by adding water to this, we can dilute this emulsion. But by adding dispersed phase, we cannot dilute this solution, or we cannot increase the concentration. If if dispersion phase particles are added, then it forms a separate layer on the surface, that's all, or at the bottom, depending on densities. So we can dilute emulsion by adding a dispersion medium in any proportion. But if you add dispersed phase, then that forms a separate layer, either above the surface of a solution or at the bottom of the solution. So we can dilute by adding any proportion of dispersion medium, not by adding dispersion phase. Next, just like as other colloidal solution, these emulsions can also show Brownian movement as well as Tyndall effect also. And these emulsions can be coagulated by using some methods called centrifugation, or by heating, or by freezing. A simple example, take some butter. Take some butter which is extracted freshly from butter by agitation of by this one, curd. And then if you keep this butter in a refrigerator, then what happens? We can observe some water which is coming out from the butter, and the hardness of this butter will be increased. There is nothing but, so this butter is nothing but water dispersed in oil. Whenever this emulsion is freezed, then this water droplets, what are present in this oil, they will come outside. That means they undergo coagulation. They undergo coagulation, they will come out from the colloidal solution, means separate layer will be formed. So emulsions are coagulated either by heating, or by freezing, or by centrifugation. Suppose either this solution or this solution is subjected to centrifugation, then water layer, oil layer gets separated. That is the process which is used for extraction of butter from milk without boiling in milk dairies. Milk is subjected to centrifugation. On centrifugation, the oil layer will get separated, and then the remaining milk is packed. So this is regarding emulsion. Overall, emulsions are the colloidal solution in which a liquid dispersed in another liquid. These two liquids must be immiscible or partially soluble. Generally, out of these, one is water and second one is considered as oil. Depending on the method of dispersion, these are classified into two types: oil dispersed in water, example milk and vanishing creams; water dispersed in oil, example butter, cream, cod liver oil. These are two types of emulsions, but these emulsions are generally less stable. To keep the emulsion stable, we will add a third substance in small amounts, which is called as emulsifying agent. And this emulsifying agent forms a protective film over the surface of colloidal particles and prevent the coagulation. As a result, we can keep the emulsion more stable. Commonly used emulsifying agents for oil in water type emulsion are gelatin, protein, natural and synthetic soaps. And emulsifying agents used for water in oil type emulsion are heavy metal salts of fatty acid, or long chain alcohols, or lamp black. So this is regarding emulsions. And next one, colloids around us. What are some examples of colloids which are present around us, and what are applications of colloids? So what is applications of these colloids? So still these two topics are there. We'll discuss right now. So what are the colloids which are present around us? First one is blue color of sky. Why sky appears as blue? See this uh, Earth atmosphere contains dust particles as well as water vapor molecules. So whenever the sunlight reaches to the Earth's surface, and the dust particles which are present in the atmosphere causes a scattering of blue wavelength light in sunlight. Since the blue wavelength light gets scattered by the dust particles, the sky appears as blue. So the sky appears blue due to the scattering of blue wavelength light of sunlight by the dust particles present in the atmosphere. That's why sky appears as blue. This is one. Next, mist, fog, rain. How mist and fog are formed? See, when the temperature is decreased below dew point, then what happens? Whatever the water vapor present in atmosphere, this water vapor get condensed, and that water vapor get condensed on dust particles present in the atmosphere, and these dust particles can move freely, can oscillate from one place to another place, which is nothing but what we observed as a mist or fog. This is the formation of mist or fog. So due to the condensation of water vapor as tiny droplets on the surface of dust particles, and these particles can spread in the atmosphere, which forms a mist or fog. Rain, so formed from clouds. So clouds are nothing but tiny droplets of water dispersed in air, which is an aerosol. So whenever the charge present on the clouds is neutralized, either by natural method or by artificial method, we can neutralize the charge present on the clouds by spraying sand, electrified sand. Thereby we can cause artificial rains. So whatever the method, either natural or synthetic method, if the charge present on the colloids is neutralized by mutual coagulation or by any other method, then whatever the tiny droplets of water is there, that tiny droplets of water undergo coagulation, and the size of the water droplet increases, and that reach to the surface as rain. So this formation of mist, fog or rain is nothing but involved in the formation of colloidal solutions, colloidal particles. Next, food. So what the food materials we are eating? Fruit juices, halwa, butter, curd, cheese, jellies. All these are examples of colloidal solution. Fruit juices, jellies, milk, curd, butter, cheese, creams. So cream is nothing but sugar dispersed in fat. So all these are examples of colloidal solutions only. Next, soil, fertile soil. See, fertile soil contains humus. That humus can keep the soil colloidal solution stable. Soil is nothing but a colloidal solution which contains humus. That humus can keep the soil colloidal solution stable in fertile soil. Next, blood. So blood is a colloidal solution. So blood is a colloidal solution in which albumin is dispersed in water. If you take a styptic action of blood, so when our cut takes place on the body, so if add some alum powder or ferric chloride, alum or FeCl3 causes coagulation of blood. So coagulation of blood takes place by addition of alum or FeCl3. That means this blood contains albumin dispersed in water. Whenever this alum or FeCl3 added, the electrolytes present in this alum or FeCl3 can cause the coagulation of blood. Thereby, the bleeding can be arrested. Suppose generally if you take any small cut takes place on skin, immediately we will apply some turmeric powder, because the turmeric powder can cause coagulation of that albumin present in the blood. So blood is an example of colloidal solution. Next, formation of delta region. So what is the delta? What is the delta region? So let us say this is sea water, sea. So river water this is. So during a rainy season, the river water consists of clay particles, nothing but dirty water. The river water contains clay particles. So whenever this river water meets the sea during rainy season, whatever the electrolytes present in the sea water, like NaCl, CaCl2, MgCl2, MgSO4, like there so many electrolytes are present in seawater. And these electrolytes can coagulate the dust particles present in river water. Thereby, what the coagulated clay particles or dust particles are there, that clay particles get scattered on both sides of this river. So these scattered clay particles, this is nothing but called as a delta region, which is more fertile soil. This is. So on both sides of the river, where the river water meets the sea, we can get a delta regions. Because when rainwater containing clay particles reaches the sea water, the clay particles undergo coagulated and get scattered on both sides of this river. And these regions, what are formed here, these are called as delta region. So formation of delta region is nothing but due to the coagulation of clay particles by the electrolyte particles present in seawater. So these are some simple examples what we observe in our daily life. That is what are present around us, which are examples of colloidal solutions. Okay, right. So once again, blue color of the sky. The sky appears as blue due to the scattering of blue wavelength light by dust particles. Mist, fog, rain. So whatever the water vapor is there, that water vapor get condensed whenever the temperature reaches below the dew point, and that water droplets get accumulated on the surface of dust particles and forms tiny droplets of water which are spread in the atmosphere, forms mist and fog. Rain is nothing but cloud is nothing but tiny droplets of water dispersed in air. Whenever the charge present on that droplets of water get neutralized, that water droplets undergo coagulation and forms bigger water particles. They will reach their surface as rain. Nothing but which involves a coagulation of water droplets. Food. The food materials like milk, cream, butter, cheese, jellies, all these are fruit juices. All these are examples of colloidal solutions. Soil. So the fertile soil is a colloidal solution in which humus acts as a protective colloid that keeps the soil colloidal solution stable. Blood. Blood is nothing but albuminoids dispersed in water. So whenever alum or ferric chloride is added to blood, that causes coagulation of blood. That means the electrolytes of alum and FeCl3 can cause coagulation of blood. Thereby, the bleeding can be arrested. Formation of delta region. When a river water meets sea water, the electrolytes present in the sea water can cause coagulation of clay particles in river water. Thereby, that clay particles get scattered on either side of the rivers. That is nothing but called as delta region. These are some colloids which are present around us. Let us see some applications. So what are the applications of colloids and where we use these applications commercially? The first one is electrical precipitation. Smoke. Electrical precipitation of smoke, and this process is carried out by using a device called as a Cottrell precipitator. So this is generally used in industrial chimneys. So if you take a industrial chimney, and what the waste gases are there coming from the industrial chimneys, and these can be released outside. But here, without releasing them directly, in this some electrodes are placed. A series of electrodes are placed in these chimneys. And what the smoke particles are there, which contains negatively charged particles. Whenever these smoke particles touches these electrodes having a positive charge, then the charge present on the smoke particles That is, the carbon particles get neutralized. They will deposit on the surface of this electrodes. And the gases which are releasing out from the chimneys are free from carbon particles as well as dust particles. So what the waste gases, the smoke coming from the industrial exhaust is not released directly into atmosphere. In the chimneys, they will place electrodes, and these electrodes can cause the neutralization of dust particles as well as smoke particles. Thereby, they will get a deposit on the surface of electrodes, or they will get collected at the bottom. And what the remaining gases which is coming out from the chimneys is free from carbon particles and dust particles. And this device which is used for separation of dust and carbon particles from the smoke is nothing but called as a Cottrell precipitator. This is used in industries for purification of the exhaust gases. So the overall process is the charge present on the clay particles or dust particles get neutralized by using electrodes, and these electrodes causes neutralization of charge present on the colloidal particles of carbon and dust. Thereby, those particles get settled and the remaining gases can be released out. So this is nothing but an electrical precipitation of smoke, and the device used here is called as Cottrell precipitator. The second one is clarification of drinking water. See, the drinking water contains dust particles. Now to this drinking water, if add small amount of alum, when alum is added, the electrolytes present in this alum can cause the coagulation of the dust particles, and the dust particles will get settled. And that dust particles can be separated by filtration, and then that is separated for a drinking process. So drinking water contains dust particles, and the dust particles can be coagulated by addition of small amount of alum, and this alum causes the neutralization of charge present on the dust particles. Thereby, they will get coagulate and get settled. This is clarification of drinking water. Third one, medicines. See, many of the medicines what we are using in a colloidal form. Why? Because if medicines are taken in colloidal form, these colloidal particles are having large surface area. So, and since these are having large surface area, and these can be accumulated easily on the surface of active sites. So, medicines are generally taken in colloidal form because of the large surface area by these colloidal particles. Next, tanning of leather. So this tanning of leather is nothing but hardening of leather. What the animal skin removed from the surface of animals, there is not much hard, there is soft, and that animal hides contains positively charged colloidal particles, and that positively charged particles can be removed by using tannin. Tannin is used for removal of positively charged colloidal particles which are present in the animal hides. See, once animal hides contains positively charged colloidal particles, and that positively charged colloidal particles can be neutralized, that is, can be coagulated by adding a negatively charged colloid called as a tannin. So this negatively charged colloid can neutralize the charge present on the colloidal particles of animal hides, which is called as a mutual coagulation. So tannin causes mutual coagulation of colloidal particles which are present in the animal hides. Thereby, the leather becomes hardened. So hardening of leather by coagulating the positively charged colloidal particles in the animal hides by using a tannin, which is negatively charged colloid. This is called as a tanning of leather. And next one, cleaning action of soap. And regarding this cleaning action of soap, already we discussed in earlier in the properties. So when soap is added to water, soap forms micelles, and that micelles are responsible for the cleaning action of soap. And next one. Photography. See, now photography, we use a colloidal solution of silver bromide. Colloidal silver bromide, AZBR, in gelatin. Colloidal silver bromide in gelatin is coated on the surface of either glass or celluloid film, which is used in a photography industry. This silver bromide is a light sensitive material. This silver bromide colloidal solution is taken in gelatin and that is applied on the surface of glass or a celluloid film, which is used there in photography. And industrial products. Industrial products as well as food products. So industrial products like rubber, synthetic rubber, paints, okay, polymers. So these are all nothing but colloidal solutions. And one more last application, rubber industry. See, rubber is extracted from the milk of the plants, which is called as latex. Colloidal solution of rubber in water is nothing but called as latex. And that colloidal solution of rubber can be coagulated generally by using either formic acid or acetic acid. And that coagulated rubber particles is separated from the latex and then it is subjected to vulcanization. There is a small amount of sulfur is added to rubber. As a result, the elastic property of rubber can be increased. So rubber is extracted is nothing but a colloidal solution of rubber particles called as latex. And that latex is coagulated by addition of formic acid or acetic acid and then it is hardened by adding small amount of sulfur. So these are some applications of colloids. So once again, electrical precipitation of smoke. Cottrell precipitator is used for precipitation of smoke and dust particles. Clarification of drinking water. Water can be purified by adding small amount of alum which causes coagulation of dust particles. Medicines. So medicines are generally taken in the form of colloidal solutions because these colloidal solutions possess some large surface area. Tanning of leather. The process of removal of positively charged colloidal particles in the animal hides by adding a negatively charged colloidal solution called tanning. By this process, the leather becomes hard. That hardening of leather is called as tanning of leather. Cleaning action of soap by the formation of micelles. Photography. In photography, we use a colloidal solution of silver bromide in gelatin, which is applied on a celluloid film or glass. Industrial products, paints, polymers, food products, like this, many industrial products we can use are colloidal solutions. Rubber industry. So in rubber industry, latex is coagulated by adding formic or acetic acid and then it is hardened and its elastic property can be increased by adding small amount of sulfur and that process is called vulcanization. So these are applications of colloidal solutions. So this is regarding total surface chemistry chapter. So total 3 parts are there in this chapter. The first one is adsorption, second one is catalysis, third one is colloidal solution. Already to your numbers that PDF is uploaded by Kumar sir. So follow that carefully and read the textbook from line to line very clearly. So this is regarding surface chemistry. Tomorrow onwards, Kumar Reddy sir will start metallurgy chapter.